Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this week's Metaworld News. This will be the highlights for the week ending the 8th of October, 2017.
Whoa, that was good.
Yes, thanks, James. We
Yep, yep.
knew I was going to slip up somewhere. That would have
Uh,
been the first for a long while, wrong century.
the
Okay.
19s, the 19s were good, so that's
Yeah,
fine.
fair enough.
Yep.
Okay, well, sadly to say we're in 2017, folks, but nonetheless, it's still the 8th of October, so let's get on with it. Right, you can find me, by the way, on Twitter. I have a feed at twitter.com/Malburns, that's Malburns, with all sorts of things relating to interfacing and virtuality included. We don't review every headset these days, thank goodness. But, general important news. We also have a Twitter stream for this program, which is twitter.com/MetaWorldNews, or one word, as in the title of this program. And I'm going to be going through highlights from that feed. Basically, it's the easiest way to do it. So without further ado, I'm starting on the Malburns feed. And the first thing of interest really is about 5 days ago. Uploadvr.com, that's uploadvr, all one word.com, featured an editorial which looks at various statistics and things. And the title of the editorial is VR is exactly where it needs to be. Which is a very convenient sort of middle-of-the-road remark, isn't it? Oh, it's not too far ahead, it's not too far behind, it's exactly where it needs to be. Anyway, their thoughts about that at uploadvr.com. The editorial was by someone called Hamza Siddiqui, I believe is the pronunciation. Or I think is the pronunciation. Okay, moving on to vrscout.com, same day, one word, VRScout, as in Boy Scouts.com. Writing for VR, the definitive guide to VR storytelling. Again, another sort of interesting take on those of you, for example, who may be interested in the creative side of VR or making VR and are, thinking about storytelling techniques. They do cover quite a lot, as is often the case with these VR posts. They are thinking a lot about 360-degree filmmaking, in other words, sort of like photo panoramic video or whatever you want to call it. But they are talking about techniques that really are, a virtual environment. However it's made and constructed is a 360 environment. So how do you tell a story when people can focus their attention in every direction, basically? Moving on a little bit. 5 days ago. Oh, right. Worthy of a post here. A site called Engadget, Engadget. You may come across them quite a bit. They're basically announcing that on November the 14th, VR luminaries Eugene Chung and Noni de la Pena will be taking the stage at a historical United Artists Theatre at the Ace Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Not visionary thinkers, yes, not clear whether it would be broadcast or simply be in Los Angeles. I don't normally include local events here. But this, I think, will be quite an important one, and I hope it is actually streamed and captured somewhere. Basically, these two have been working with virtuality since the early 1990s, so they go back rather a bit. And between the two of them, they've created some of the most compelling VR experiences to date. And they're going to join the 5 recipients of the Engadget Alternatives Realities Grant Program. And, so check out Engadget for that news and tell you what it is if you want to know more. Biggest news of the week, probably. This link goes to modemworld.me, which is Thingy's blog. MODEMWORLD.me. Often associated with Second Life, this blog, but she was actually just the first person to get this announcement, and that is 4 days ago, Alt Space VR. that went under and then it's sort of been kept alive, even though Allspace VR, the company, went. Well, no longer. Allspace VR, the whole package has now been acquired by. Oh dear, sorry, I'm feeling a bit ill. Microsoft.
So I know why you're ill.
Yeah, it will be plying ahead apparently, or with appropriate backing. They do say, as Microsoft often do when they take over something, that it's going to remain autonomous and will run independently, and we won't be interfering with it. I have heard this said many times before, and. Well, we all know the story, I think.
We all know the story.
Yeah, we all know the story. So, for the time being anyway, Allspace VR is still around, functioning as normal, but with a new boss. And the new boss, as the song goes, may not quite be the same as the old boss. Right. VoicesOfVR.com, back on track here. Number 583. God, they'll be in 1,000 soon, probably. They post lots of podcasts throughout the week. This particular one is an interview with somebody called Brian Blue from Gartner, and basically discussing the state of the VR and AR industries in general. Gartner Research, of course, are famous for their hype cycle predictions and studying of trends and stuff. So quite interesting. And the interview, of course, was done by Kent By of Voices of VR, so quite a good interview there. There's a little bit about it on the website, but principally it's a podcast. Back to Engadget, actually, Engadged again. Scientists are testing a VR system to control robots from virtual cockpits. Now, in a way, you can say, don't they do this already? Aircraft pilots in the military probably sit in little chambers with a virtual reality headset on and go around bombing places at the other end of the planet with no risk to them. So in a way, it's the same sort of thing, but this is actually sort of a bit more complicated, because the idea is, if from this virtuality cockpit, you won't just be pressing buttons on your pilot's thing and steering. The remote plane, for example, may actually have a physical human type robot in it, and you'll be controlling the robot, and the robot will be controlling the devices, if you see what I mean. Anyway, they're playing around with it, and if I remember rightly, there is another post that touches a bit more on that coming up. So read about that at Engadget. Read Write. This is Read Write, or one word, but the R and W are in capitals, and they are at readwrite.com, I believe. VR will transform the way we experience these 6 things. Standard editorial, really. They think, VR is coming, it's going to transform this, that, and the other, and they've picked 6 things that they are pretty damn sure VR is going to profoundly affect, shall we say. Right, getting closer to the weekend now. virtualreality-news.net. So it's virtual reality, or one word, when a dash, then news, and then .net. VR heat maps offer detailed insights for architects, designers, and retailers. When you are in an architect, designer, or even a shop display person is in virtual reality laying things out, we normally think of it as a visual thing, plus the electronic physics and stuff that allows you to just put the word there. But this is actually looking at the possibility that you better use heat maps in the virtual reality environment. And if you're designing a space, for example, in a virtual space that is prototyping, say, a real world space for public commercial activities, the presence of a heat map in the virtual environment will help you actually modify the virtual environment by the heat map, for example, could simulate the areas of a building that will tend to gravitate to high population and lower population. It's a bit like looking for a heat-sensitive camera at the number of people in a given area. So you can test out population movements and a whole load of things simply by generating a simulated heat map within the simulated environment. So simulations within simulations within simulations, you get the idea. Right, okay, so read about that at virtuality-news.net. RoadToVR.com, standard site here, Scott Hayden reporting. Theatre VR, this is the name of a company, Theatre spelled the English way, by the way, R-E, and then VR in caps on the end, but all one word. They want you to play the role of Hamlet on the virtual stage with real actors. Great title, not limited, of course, to Hamlet, but they are kind of working on the idea of developing what they call an experience machine. And the idea is this has actually been done in places like Open Simulator in a rudimentary sense. The idea is they will put on theatre performances. Instead of being streamed by video online, you'll be streamed into the theatre. And the actual theatre productions will have openings for you, the viewer, or participant, I should say, to actually play a role in the performance, if you see what I mean. So the title comes from the idea that they're putting Hamlet on in a virtual world, and you yourself will play the role of Hamlet, but the regular actors will play all the other roles. Interesting idea, participatory, always good way to approach breaking into new things like this. Right, teleoperating robots with virtual reality, getting inside a robot's head. This one from yesterday, in fact, is pretty ties in with the other mention, a couple of posts back I mentioned. But interestingly, this report comes from Ray Kurzweil at kurzweil.net. And he always, of course, knows exactly what he was talking about when it comes to futurism and futurology. KurzweilAI.net is spelled as KurzweilAI and then .net. And there aren't an immense number of posts there, so if you're going to look it up after the show, for example, I'm sure it'll be still pretty much top of the list. Teleoperating robots with virtual reality, getting inside a robot's head. Okay. Virtuality-news.net again. Again, one from yesterday. Virtual reality in healthcare and medicine is set to grow to 285 million US dollars by 2022. So that's kind of 5 years away, and that's a grow to rather than a grow by. Sounds like a lot of money when you say $285 million, but in the way of these things, healthcare and medicine nationwide, that doesn't sound like the kind of massive growth we're talking about. But anyway, that is fact. Well, it's speculation, of course, but it's speculative fact, if you see what I mean. It's truthiness, or whatever the American dictator calls it these days. Right, so yeah, you'll find that at virtuality-news.net. Right, another site, virtual reality pop, as in pop music, and it's all one word, virtualrealitypop.com. Designing for presence in virtual reality, part 1. An introduction. Well, this is as good a place to start as any, isn't it, really? So if you want to know about designing for VR, it doesn't specify whether we're talking about hardware-driven VR in out of the home or in the home, or whether we're talking about, virtual worlds as we know them today, like OpenSim or Hypothetical or something. But it's always been said that, they're the advanced communication tool, but designing, virtual worlds, virtual spaces, as it were, it really is all about presence. And it's interesting that this series is actually called Designing for Presence. They clearly agree that the strongest, they strongly believe that presence is the quality that makes virtual reality unique as a medium, and so on and so forth. So if you want to learn about designing for presence, check out virtualrealitypop.com. metaworld.com. Right, post@medium.com, always a good, well, I say long form reads. Some of them only take 2 or 3 minutes. They're not all very long form. Lindsay Saunders reports, building web VR worlds together. Mozilla and Sketchfab are launching a real-time VR design challenge. If you're interested in designing for virtual worlds and maybe using web VR, which of course is a virtuality system that can appear in a browser, especially the Mozilla browsers, you might gather, which is what, Firefox and stuff, isn't it? Hello. Sorry, I think we.
What was that?
Yeah, I just heard talking on the line.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was me.
Was that? Oh, okay, right, right, okay. Sorry about that, folks. We got a cross line, I think is the expression.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm having some audio issues, Mel, and was trying to troubleshoot them, and so I hope I've got a fix here. So my apologies.
Okay, no problem.
Yep.
Yes, I do hope everybody's receiving all this loud and clear. It seems to be okay from what I can tell, but we'll find out later, won't we?
Yep.
Right, okay, so medium.com has this post from about Mozilla and SketchUp collaborating on a challenge. Right, where are we? Uploadvr.com. Sculpt VR, which is a piece of software which I think is on Steam and more available for VR environments with hardware helmets and stuff. They've had an update, so Sculpt VR's smooth update has incredible detail to handmade worlds. Anybody actually using Sculpt VR, which is only one of many tools, of course, for actually building and modeling the worlds, may be interested in their smooth update, which apparently includes greater detail and more expressive handmade objects, and enabling the creation of far more expressive handmade objects and worlds. Okay, get that right one day, won't we? Right, moving on. Digital trends. Project Aurora, inverted commas, brings the massive world of EVE Online to iOS and Android. Now, don't go jumping for your iPads just yet. This won't actually happen to the beginning of the year. But I think this is great news because although EVE Online is very much a role-playing game, it's a bit like World of Warcraft, where these games are actually multiplayer games are actually so huge. They're actually used for a lot of social activities, like people holding meetings in World of Warcraft, hopefully in somewhere where they don't get blown up. But the game platforms have been used for much, more than just gameplay. Most people, of course, use dedicated virtual worlds for that, but the two technologies are aligned. And the fact that they're going to be able to get EVE Online working on the iPad and iOS system, and indeed Android, makes me think, well, if EVE Online can do it, why can't ... They have huge amounts of users. They make any actual virtual world, i.e. not a game world, pale by comparison. And if they can bring that connectivity to mobile devices, then they're going to be a hell of a step ahead of the competition, including virtual worlds. So just the fact that that is happening is a good sign for not only multiplayer games, but of that ilk, but also other things too, I would hope. Right. Newspaper in the UK here is called The Guardian. You may well have heard of it. They're read throughout the world basically now. Everything's online. After I feel ecstatic and emotional. The way to phrase this actually is, it's a quote. Afterwards, in other words, after being in virtuality, he feels ecstatic and emotional. And the key question in the article is, could virtuality replace therapy? Or be therapy, I suppose, rather than replace therapy. Looking at the side of using virtuality for therapeutic applications. An example being someone that, used to, some guy who spent 24 years in the army working in helicopters is now scared of heights, and he's terrified of going up 1 or 2, 3 floors of a building or driving over a bridge. And they use virtuality to put him in a position of having those scare things challenged, to overcome them, kind of thing. So therapy there, and read that VR therapy. Read all about it in The Guardian. Also in the UK, there is a magazine, newspaper, call it what you will. It's a weekly called The Stage, and can be found at thestage.co.uk. And they had a report on the town of Brighton on the south coast here, opening up a virtual reality lab, especially for theatre companies. Basically, it is a lab. It's designed that theatre companies, whether in Brighton or elsewhere, can go down there and experiment with the virtual reality technology with a view to using it in theatrical productions, whether delivering theatre via virtual reality or using virtual reality within the set design, I suppose, of theatre itself. So two ways of looking at that, really. Right, Vicky Thompson writing at a site called iq.intel.com. This is a site, intelligence site at Intel. iq.intel.com, exploring the virtual world of Sansar. Sansar is a new, it's more a collection of virtual experiences than anything one would really call a virtual world. But it's significant because it's been made and launched in public beta now from Linden Lab, who of course made the original sort of social virtual world Second Life back in the day. And interesting. It's a good overview take of what they're trying to do from the point of view of the intelligence pods at Intel, no less. So I thought I'd stick that one in there. There are, there is actually a trend towards a lot of so-called virtual worlds, which are really linked virtual spaces and virtual experiences these days. Sansar is one, another one, for example, Sine Wave, for example, and a few others a bit further behind in the loop, so to speak. Right, now, I've got a site here I'm really going to have to spell. I was going to say it's a Eureka alert, but I don't think that's Eureka is the way you meant to say it. So it's EUREKALERT.org. And researchers at Binghamton University in it's the State University of New York, so it's Binghamton, NY. They've come up with something rather interesting on the well, they are developing or aiming to develop something interesting on their haptic thing. It's a new technology that claims to use mouth gestures to interact with virtual reality. Now, this is not the same as, say, waving your hand in front of a Leap Motion or moving your arms around with a glove in a virtual reality headset. This is specifically geared towards the gestures coming from your mouth, which presumably could be picked up on a standard webcam, a bit like Leap Motion does. And it can sense presumably things like commands and what you're saying, a bit like the new voice technologies coming along. And in terms of virtuality, you might be able to interact with the virtual world by literally telling the environment, walk me forward, turn me right, things like that, because it's the gestures coming from the mouth that are going to be interpreted very specifically. So it's all part of the haptic interfacing sort of complex, should we say, but especially in this case geared towards the mouth. And that's it for my main feed, the highlights of the Mal Burns feed. I'm also going to quickly move to our Metaworld news feed to see what I've got there that isn't here. Right, the blog at the Kakua viewer for OpenSim and Second Life, for that matter, they're two separate strands. there's been a lot of talk about Kakua recently because a group called the IMA claimed to have recompiled it and be fiddling with it. But this actually comes from blog.kokuavua.org. That is spelled Kokuavier. So blog.kokuavua.org, and the post is by somebody most people know, Nikki Perrin. OpenSim versions of Kakua and the path forward towards issue 6. Basically a complete rundown on what is happening with the current Kakua viewers. And those still involved in developing. I believe Nikki Perrin is the chap who's retiring and sort of trying to find people to take over bits of this. But there is still basically a current thread of information here, and the post also includes links to SourceForge and various places where the raw code, current versions of the raw code, I might add, are actually hosted for anybody to download and compile them and play with them or whatever. And the places the latest Kakua OS is available for download seems to be sourceforge.net. I believe it was available in other places and people have downloaded it, but have been downloading a pretty old version, so they're not actually downloading anything like the current code. Anyway, find out more at blog.kokuavua.org. Week 59 with details. We don't really need to know about them, but hgsafari.blogspot.co.uk is Thursday Ember's blog, and I think week 159 details would have been replaced by week 159 report by now. So if you want to know what happened with all the piratey sort of stuff and various other things on Safari last week, that's where you find one. It involves an Edu3D group, education group, who are working and pirating, I hasten to say, on CraftGrid, which is in Italy, and then there was a social venue as the second destination. Right. Hypergroup Business, one report from them this week from David Karuki, Maria's assistant there. Zangrid, who were formerly known as Zandrama's Grid. Actually, no, Zandrama's Grid. I wonder if that was deliberate. Anyway, long ago it changed from Zandrama's Grid to Zangrid. But they are shutting down at the end of the month. It's one of the oldest commercial OpenSim grids. And basically they're trying to do a bit of PR here to make sure that their users get in and back and get their inventories and recover all their stuff. There's nothing, it's always depressing when a grid closes, but I gather the management of this one, can't really continue with it for their own reasons. There's no lurking big failure news behind this, as far as I gather. It's just as they're retiring kind of thing. Right. Hypergrid Business have also reported that Genesis Metaverse has made a point of telling everybody that they're leaving DigiWorlds as their hosting provider. Not exactly clear where they're going. But it happens barely a year after Genesis Metaverse stopped hosting its own grid infrastructure and moved to hosting with DigiWorlds, and I think they just decided to go it alone again. Who knows what the story is there, but that piece of information is really all there is the news there. And I'm having a quick look in our Google Plus department here. Yep, Safari does the math again. hgsafari.blogspot.co.uk. That will be that's Thursday's report on this week's Safari, is the announcement for it. Also, blog machinamatrix.com. So that's I'm going to spell that. That's MACHINIMATRIX.org. Despite the name, which makes you think of machinima, this is more towards to do with authoring. Gaia Clary, who writes from there, is announcing that Avastar version 2.1 release is now out. Avastar, well, you can buy it off her in Linden's from Second Life, or you can buy it off her through Unity Store, I believe it is, or PayPal. She offers a lot of ways of buying Avastar. It's a relatively cheap, maybe $20 or something program, and it's a set of plugin tools for the authoring tool Blender. And it allows you, basically, there's just masses of improvements and new features in it, including full support for bento skeletons and, well, all sorts of other things. She says she's releasing a document in the next couple of days outlining all the new features. Too many, obviously, for the blog post. But basically, if you use Blender to make mesh avatars or mesh builds or things like that for Second Life or OpenSim or any other platform that will take it, then the new version of Avastar will have lots more bells and whistles on it. She does mention there's something called a bento skeleton. This is something devised by Linden Lab for Second Life. But support for a bento skeleton tends to be in a viewer. So some viewers like Firestorm and Alchemy that you may use in the open metaverse, if they're viewers that can also be used for the Second Life or Garden, you should find that the bento stuff will probably work in, say, Open Simulator too. But I think about the extra attachment points and realism that the avatar gets won't necessarily be visible if somebody's using a viewer that doesn't support this bento thing. But that doesn't stop you making them, basically. So you can download the latest version of Avastar from Gaia for that. And that, I think, more or less completes my roundup for this week. But we can't ignore our developers corner, because assuming our audio is okay, hopefully we have James to give us a quick rundown on what developers have been talking about this week, particularly in OpenSim, of course.
Yeah, absolutely, Mel. And the audio thing seems to have settled down now. I don't have any explanation. I'm using a wireless sound device, and I don't know, planes flying overhead, governments surveilling, but it's working well. So
okay.
I'll continue with that.
Touch wood. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. There are a few touchy moments there, but I think we're okay. I wasn't able to attend the meeting on Tuesday for work issues, but I did review the notes, and it seemed it was an average group of people, not a large group of people assembled for the OpenSim developers office hours, when users and grid owners could come and chat with the developers. But the discussion primarily was around how scripts are impacting the server, and in particular the grid server processing. And scripting is one, I think, still of the very unique things about Open Simulator compared to other platforms, is that part of our ability to model and create worlds is also the ability to script and program those worlds. And so I think to some degree this is a known issue about complex scripts can have some issues impacting the server, but there's quite a good discussion and some troubleshooting in that conversation that again are at the OpenSim developer webpage. All the notes are published there, and you can find this at opensimulator.org if you search for office hours. And that really is a summary of the conversation last week.
Yeah. Being the same thing, really. Right. Okay, well, thanks for that, James. Yeah. So, that is, I think, just about it here. As far as virtual worlds, social worlds are concerned, when you have worlds that are inhabited by populations, so basically real people in avatar form, they do get excited about all sorts of things. In Second Life, that is some things. In OpenSim, it's others. High Fidelity, others. Science-based, others, etc., etc. But one thing that has always struck me is that for some very, very strange reason, in virtual worlds, Halloween starts on the 1st of October and lasts for the whole month rather than Halloween or Hallows Eve. And this seems to be a tradition. If you want to go into Sansar currently, if you want to go into Sciencebase currently, if you want to go into any number of hypergrid-enabled regions on the hypergrid, if you want to go to Second Life, and let me think, what was the other ones? High Fidelity. Well, everybody's having a spookiness competition. Linden's have a spooky trail that goes on all month. High Fidelity has got, I think it's a $10,000 competition going on for the spookiest build you can put up in High Fidelity. Similar things, I believe, in Sine Wave. Anyway, it's the season of the spooks, and I'm not talking about the Whitehall spooks.
The people surveilling my Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah, exactly. or your microphone headphone setup, for that matter.
Right.
So it's a season of spookiness, so you can expect to find all sorts of events. If you're into that kind of thing, then you may find some interesting stuff to do. And hunts galore. Again, it's almost as if, apart from October becoming a month Halloween these days, we're entering that build up to the holiday season at the end of the year. And I suppose it's becoming autumn in the Northern Hemisphere, so people are hunkering down, getting active again a little bit. So it's also, I don't know about elsewhere, but in Britain here, it's the conference season, and this seems to be the case virtually too. Avatar Fest is still going on. For those of you who can hypergrid over there, showing the best, sort of community work in hypergrid. Later on, there will be another one called Avi Fest coming up. I haven't been given the exact dates for that. It's held on Franco Grid, and it's not so much an avatar social, it's about creating avatars. In other words, people will be making wonderful avatars that you can get or buy or stuff and exhibiting them. It's the art of avatar creation, I think, is what the exhibition's all about. It's organized by Cherry Manga, amongst others, over on Franco Grid. Coming up on the 9th and 10th of December, on the much more serious side, there is, of course, OSCC, the Open Simulator Community Conference, which is held on the opensimulator.org grid. And the weekend after that is dates. Hang on, I need to count here. What is it? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. But 16th and 17th of December will be the first ever Hypergrid International Expo. And I know today that will has its own grid, and that was finalised today, and it will tie in with OSCC quite a lot. But there will be 4 half days in different languages for that expo. Still, hopefully, a visual feast, interesting to everybody, because translations will be available. But basically, there'll be a half day in French, half day in German, half day in Italian, and a half day in, what was the other one? Spanish. That's right. So it'd be like 4 mini expos that become the international expo, so to speak. So it's all kicking, and I guess the aftermath of those last 2 will keep you going through the holiday if you've got nothing else to do as well. So yeah, fun time. Hunker down and get on with things again. Summer is gone, please, folks. Yes, we may regret it, but it's gone. Sad to say. Anyway, I think that's it for this week. We will, of course, be back again, same time, same place next week with another update of the week's news. For those of you who are actually watching live at this very minute and will be expecting to hang on for In-World Review, sad to say In-World Review will not be happening this week. We have decided to cancel it. Our main guest, unfortunately, we haven't been able to confirm. They don't seem to be around. We got all the pictures and material, but we haven't got them. So on that basis, we're just sort of cancelling it. We might, it's nice to have a week off now and again, and there's no point in going on if we haven't got a guest. So there you go. That's it. Thanks to James here for developing news and handling the cameras, and we're out of here. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.